Greetings. Welcome to our midweek offering of our weekly devotionals. This week we're looking at the first 8 verses in chapter 6 of the book of the prophet Isaiah. I remember seeing a movie or a TV show years ago where there was a preacher in front of a congregation, and he held out his hands, and the stigmata, the wounds of Christ appeared in his hands and in his side. He started bleeding, and everyone in attendance considered this to be a supernatural occurrence, and it increased his popularity. Of course, it was a carnival trick. He had makeup or something in his sleeves, and it was just simply a trick to convince people that God was behind him, that the Spirit of God was with him. And I've seen other instances in real life of people in churches handling snakes, doing crazy things to prove the authority of God is with them, or, smacking people in the forehead and supposedly miraculously healing them. All of these sort of sideshow tricks are meant to convey that this particular person, preacher, pastor, whomever, possesses the power and authority of God with them. And it's meant to sort of convince those in attendance to listen, to follow this particular person. Well, verses 2 to 4 in this chapter kind of serve the same function for the prophet Isaiah. We read in verse 2, a vision of God. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The pivots on the thresholds shook at the voice of those who call, and the house filled with smoke. This is sort of a classic appearance of the glory of God, and it's meant to sort of prove to those listening to Isaiah that the prophet has the authority and the power of God behind him, and so they are meant to listen. Of course, folks didn't really listen to the prophet Isaiah all that much, even still. But when reading these verses, I thought to myself, well, what do I do as a preacher, as a pastor? How do I get folks to sort of buy in to what I'm saying? Certainly, I'm not going to have this heavenly vision of God appearing beside me, and I don't think I'm going to handle any snakes anytime soon, or provide any miracles in our church. So how do we know to trust in a person's authority or to listen? I've had countless Christians in my lifetime tell me that they were right, or try to convince or persuade me that their version of God's truth was the right one. And how do you distinguish? How do you tell? Well, I remember words that my dad spoke to me back when I was a teenager. Back then, I sort of had I had a bad relationship with the truth. And I often was a bit of a schemer, a manipulator, and my dad knew this about me. And when I would ask him to do something for me or tell him something, he would say, well, Bob, I don't know. You don't have that great of a track record. And I think the same thing is true in speaking the gospel and preaching the gospel and teaching the gospel and in sharing our faith with one another. It's our track record. Do the things we say, do we follow through on them? Do we do what we say we're going to do? Are we honest? Are we transparent? Are we humble? Do we live the gospel message of generosity and love and kindness and compassion in our relationships with one another? And if we do these things, if we live the gospel in our relationships, in our community life together, if we have a good track record, I think people will know that we have the presence of God, the authority of God behind what we say and do. Amen.